Hello, I Ameya Sathaye on behalf of SarkariTel.com and DiplomacyIndia.com welcome His Excellency Mr. Dinesh Bhatia on this very special series Envoy Speaks. SarkariTel.com has been in public service for the past 2 decades, focusing on government policies and programs and reaching out to the people at large. While DiplomacyIndia.com focuses on India's world engagement and promote bilateral ties, tourism, culture, people-to-people contact, and investment opportunities. Before I begin, let me take you through a brief profile of our esteemed guest. His Excellency Mr. Dinesh Bhatia assumed the charge of Ambassador to the Republic of Argentina with concurrent accreditation to Uruguay and Paraguay on 21st August 2019. Prior to his current appointment, he served as Consul General in Toronto and was also Ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire and Guinea and Liberia. So, welcome, Your Excellency, to this series.
Thank you, Ameya. Thank you for having me in this show, in this program.
Yeah. So, I'll start with the first question. Can you give us an update on the current state of relations between India and Argentina? Since Latin America's biggest country, how do you see the cultural relations between the two countries?
Well, Ameya, first of all, Argentina is one of the farthest countries away from India. You know, the distance is about 16,000 kilometers. And it is, of course, in terms of area, it is the second largest in Latin America and the eighth largest country in the world. India, as you know, is the seventh largest country in the world. So in terms of geographical area, India and Argentina are quite similar. Argentina is slightly smaller than India. And there are complementarities and there are similarities between India and Argentina. India has a huge population. Argentina has a very little population of 45 million people only. Argentina has been a developed country, more or less a developed country for last about 150 years. In fact, it had entered the top seven richest countries in the world by 1908. In fact, Buenos Aires had the first subway system, the metro system, by 1913, the first in Latin America, and I think one of the first in the entire world. That way, Argentina has been a very progressive country. It has done very well in agriculture. It was an agriculture basket, food basket in the 20th century, the first half of 20th century for the entire world. And between India and Argentina, we have had very close relationship. India opened the first embassy in Latin America in 1949 in Buenos Aires, and Argentina already had a trade office which was converted into an embassy in 1950. And then both the countries have been collaborating very well on several issues, political, economic, cultural. Two things I would like to particularly mention that the trade has been going up steadily in the last 10 years. The last year, 2019, 2020, the trade between India and Argentina reached a peak of 3.09 billion. And that is very creditable. In fact, even this year, when the trade has been falling among various countries, in fact, Argentina's overall trade has fallen drastically, but with trade with India has continued to grow in the first 9 months of this year. So that way, I think the trade economic relationship is very strong between India and Argentina. The second aspect which I would like to mention, which is worth noting, is that Argentina has perhaps the highest respect for Indian culture and yoga. If you look at all around the world, you will find the highest per capita yoga practitioners in Argentina. Every nook and corner, you have a yoga school. People have huge respect for Indian culture, Indian civilization, Indian music, Indian dance, yoga, Ayurveda. And although we are 16,000 kilometers away, the two countries have such an affinity, which is amazing for me. In fact, before I reached here, I didn't have any idea about this. I had no inkling. But when I reached here, I realized, look, this is a place where they are closest to India in spite of the huge distance between the two countries.
That's really great. That brings me to the next question. What were the key elements of this partnership since the visit of the Argentinian president to India in 2019?
The visit of President of Argentina, in fact, the former President of Argentina, Mr. Macri, was preceded by the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Argentina for attending the G20 summit that was in October, November of 2019 or 2018. And there, in fact, the relationship between the two blossomed. They had a very good chemistry between the two leaders. In fact, before that, they also had several meetings on the sidelines of various other summits, be it G20 and other summits. And subsequently, of course, at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi, former President visited India in February of 2019. And at that stage, we elevated the relationship between the two countries to strategic partnership. Subsequently, the government in Argentina changed. There were elections in October. The new government took over on 10th of December 2019. And the good part is that the keenness to partner with India, keenness to cooperate with India is even more in the new government. So I would say the relationship is continuing in a accelerated mode, and we are moving into several new areas with the new government. Of course, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, that we have had excellent trade and economic relationship. We have a presence of a large number of corporates in Argentina. We have just launched an India-Argentina Business Council, IABC, in the month of October, where the Minister of Productive Development, which is equivalent to Minister of Industry in our system, Mr. Matthias Kulfas, was kind enough to join us at the embassy to launch this India-Argentina Business Council. And in addition to that, if we look at all other areas, in fact, Argentina was among the first country, in fact, the first country in Latin America to join India's initiative of CDRI, Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And then Argentina is also a member of ISA, International Solar Alliance, among the first countries in Latin America to join that. So Argentina and India have been cooperating at various levels, multilateral forum. We are members of G20, where we are also a member of Emerging Market Economies Group, EMA Group in G20. And the relationship has been seeing upswing in the last few years, particularly in the last government of Mr. Macri, and with the new government taking over of Mr. Alberto Fernandez. I think the relationship is going to touch new skies.
You rightly said that even the change of guard has not deterred the India-Argentina relationship.
On the contrary, I would say that change of government has in fact accelerated the relationship.
That's great. Excellency, how are the defense relations shaping up? And please update us on various MOUs which have been done between the two countries in the areas of energy also.
Well, during the visit of the former president to India, we had signed about 10 MOUs and agreements, and subsequently, of course, we are working on various other. We are now at the moment working on a MOU between India and Argentina on mining and mineral cooperation. But besides that, we are also working through our PSUs. We have a PSU which is mandated to bring special minerals to India. That's created by the coalition of three public sectors, and the new public sector is called Kabil, Khanij Bidesh India Limited. And this PSU has already made 2 visits to Argentina in 2019. Of course, this year has been this year has seen a lot of different challenges. But Kabil has been continuing to work with its counterparts in Argentina. It has already signed 2 MOUs in Argentina, and the third one is on the anvil, and we hope to sign it in next few days or maybe a couple of weeks maximum. And the idea is to bring lithium from Argentina to India, create a value chain, a global bilateral value chain of lithium. Besides that, we are also working with Argentina in oil and gas sector. As you might know, that Argentina has the second highest shale gas deposits in the world. It also has the fourth largest shale oil deposits in the world. And OVL, the ONGC Videsh Limited, is working closely with the energy giant here, which is called YPF. Both the organizations recently had a very good meeting at the level of their CEOs. And we are working on various options, various proposals, and I'm hopeful that in the energy sector we'll have a very fruitful partnership for mutual benefit of both the countries.
Ambassador, I also understand that there is some cooperation going on the nuclear front also. If you could update us on this also.
We already have a MOU between the two nuclear departments or agencies between of the two countries. From our side, the Department of Atomic Energy. From this side, it's a organization called KONE. That's an acronym of the organization. They already had their first meeting around the time of president visit last year, and we are now looking at the second meeting of the second working group meeting between the two organizations. On the nuclear side, Argentina has a I won't call it a PSU. It's a mix of PSU and public sector, private sector, a company called INVAP, which is a very advanced technology. They are doing a project in Navi Mumbai for isotopes development, which is a very critical requirement for many of our healthcare system. And that plant is now near completion. I hope it will be commissioned very soon, as soon as we have more normal situation when people start traveling. Of course, things are normalizing here in Argentina pretty much. Although Argentina started the quarantine on 20th of March this year, but within about 3 to 4 months, they realized that they have to start opening the country, and they followed the more or less the same curve as India has done. And I would say the country technically is still under quarantine, but we are moving towards a situation when there's a lot of movement of people. Industries have opened, businesses have opened, and I'm sure very soon there'll be opening of schools, colleges, and so on and so forth, bringing Argentina back to a very normal situation. So in energy sector, we are looking at even more cooperation, nuclear energy, more cooperation. Argentina has a very advanced nuclear energy program. As you might know, they have a joint program with Brazil too. They are a very responsible member of International Atomic Energy Agency, and both the countries are also collaborating at that level.
Uh, that's very great. My next question is that, as you said earlier, that Argentina is the second largest country in Latin America. So, how do you see Argentina's role in bridging India's relations with Latin America also?
Well, as such, India-Latin America relationships are very good because we maintained our bilateral relations with all the other countries directly. From this embassy, we are also dealing with Uruguay and Paraguay. With both of them, we have a very smooth, a very amicable relationship. Argentina, as a responsible member, as a large country in Latin America, is certainly a bridge between India and Latin America. And it is the largest in terms of Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America. Argentina is the largest country, and it has a certain role to play, which it is playing, of course. As I mentioned, that it has a certain affinity with India, which is very critical, very important for us.
Ambassador, what's your vision for the next 10 years of how India-Argentina relations could shape up in the next decade?
Well, I think we already have a very strong foundation between the two countries, the relationship between the two countries, and we should move towards newer areas, expand the horizons. And in terms of trade and economy, we are looking at new areas, diversification of trade between the two countries. Argentina is also planning to diversify the trade with India. India is also already in the process of diversifying. We want to have a relationship in particularly in pharmaceuticals with India. We want to have recognition of Ayurveda by Argentine government. And then, of course, there are a host of other products where there are strong possibilities. But more importantly, I think when we are looking at the relationship between the two countries, it is a people-to-people relations which are very, very important. The trade continues, which is led by the private sector and facilitated by the governments. But at the same time, the people, if they have affinity with the other country, the relationship automatically builds up. I think that way we have a very strong base, and we look forward to having more people-to-people contact, not through yoga, Ayurveda, Indian dance and music, Indian culture, Indian civilization, and also very importantly, when things become normal, by having more tourism between the two countries. Argentina is a great tourism destination for Indians. We have several thousand Indians coming here in the last year. And of course, Argentina, it's a very long distance, very long flight. In fact, you have to take the longest flight from Delhi to reach Buenos Aires. In spite of this long distance, I would say that both the countries, both the peoples are very keen to build relationship, and that's an impetus for the governments to build stronger relationships.
Excellency, when you talk about the tourism, one question which comes to my mind is, is there any arrangement or MOU on air connectivity? Because if you have a direct connectivity, it will further enhance the tourism prospects.
We don't have direct air connectivity, which is also not possible, as you must realize that the flying time between Delhi and Buenos Aires is about 22 to 23 hours minimum, irrespective of the route you take. I'm not talking about the transit times only. I'm only mentioning that air travel time, air time. So keeping that in mind, it's not possible to have direct flights. But we have now several connections, of course, connections to Middle East, to connections to Europe, connections to US and Canada. There's a huge possibility of people to travel. As far as tourism is concerned, you mentioned the MOU. We already have an MOU in the field of tourism, and of course, we are now trying to get the both the sides, both the ministries of tourism, to meet once. Even in spite of the quarantine and lockdown, we can meet digitally, which has happened in the last few months. In fact, I must mention that in the last few months, the Foreign Office consultation took place through virtual media. Then we had the Joint Trade Committee meeting after about 29 years. In spite of the lockdown, we had this meeting through the virtual mechanism. And of course, foreign ministers talked to each other. And there about a week back, the two agriculture ministers spoke to each other. They had a video conference with each other. So the relationship is wonderfully shaping up. And of course, tourism will play a very important role because it will bring people closer to other people.
Excellency, what are the principal items of import from Argentina and exports to Argentina? And Argentina possesses rare earth metals which is very critical for the developing in India's electronic industry. And what are Indian plans to source rare earth materials from Argentina?
I have already commented that we are looking at bringing lithium from Argentina, where we have really done a lot of good work, and things are moving at a decent pace. As far as other products are concerned, India exports mainly petroleum oils, herbicides, yarn, polyesters, organic compounds, insecticides, and apparels, etc. Because our trade basket with Argentina is pretty diversified. Whereas when we talk about trade export from Argentina to India, the basket is mainly focused on soybean oil, which is about 90% of their export. Then you have the sunflower oil. And last year, very interestingly, of course, they added gold as one of the major items of export from Argentina to India. So, of course, as I said, there are possibilities in several products, from food items to Ayurveda to FMCG to toys to apparels and particularly pharmaceuticals, I would say.
Okay. COVID-19, it has created a havoc all around the globe. How is Argentina coping with this? If you could update us.
Uh, as I mentioned earlier also that both the countries have followed more or less the same curve. When Argentina started opening up after about 3 to 4 months of strict quarantine in Argentina, which started on 20th of March 2020, the number of cases started rising up. But now the number of cases are not rising that rapidly. The number of recoveries are very large. Number of deaths are not too many here, it's below the world average, and number of active cases have come down drastically. Argentina has coped rather well, I must say, thanks to the leadership of President Alberto Fernandez and his cabinet, which has worked in tandem with each other, along with the provincial governments and the city governments, to ensure that the spread of the pandemic is controlled as much as possible.
That's great. The next question would be, there are new work cultures or protocols which have been initiated in various embassies. If you could update on this. Any new work cultures or protocols being followed in the Indian embassies and obviously US?
Well, the pandemic has changed the work culture drastically all around the world. Not only for the embassies, but I would say for all governments, private sector, corporates, for everyone. For us, when the pandemic began, the quarantine began in Argentina, we were forced to close down the embassy because the movement was almost impossible. There was almost a curfew 24 into 7. And then about 5 weeks later, we started opening the embassy for about 3 hours a day. And gradually we enhanced it to about 6 hours a day. And now we are working for about 7 hours from 9:30 to 4:30, which is more or less very close to the normal working hours. And we hope to go back to the normal working hours very soon. And of course, we have been taking extra precautions. In fact, we had a couple of cases in the mission, in the embassy of COVID. And at that time, we had to shut down the embassy once again for a few days. And of course, when there are visitors in the embassy, they are, the temperatures are taken. There's a strict protocol imposed by the government, and we follow all those strict guidelines that have been imposed locally so that we help the government in control of the pandemic.
Excellency, you talked about tourism, you talked about people to people contact. Tell our viewers how popular is our Bollywood or Indian dramas. Are they viewed in Argentina, or do we have any special channels?
Uh, Unfortunately, in spite of the impact of Indian culture, Indian dance and music, the Bollywood does not have much penetration in Argentina. But we are trying to now rectify the situation. In fact, we are going to do a major film festival, of course, virtually in the month of beginning in the month of January with one of the top channels, the film and music channel in Argentina, and we are seeking the support of ZTV in this. And of course, we are now pushing also for collaboration between the two government companies, which is Prasar Bharati at our end, and they have TV Publica, which is the public TV, which also controls the government radio channels. So, in fact, as we are talking, in the next 24 hours, they are going to meet virtually the CEOs of these two organizations, and we are trying to ensure that there's an exchange of content, not only movies, serials, but even other programs which give more knowledge about one country in the other country. So that's the objective. And I think there's a lot of work to be done for dissemination of knowledge about Bollywood. Not only Bollywood, I would say, even about the regional cinema. And very interestingly, we have in the last 2 months started a social media campaign called Conoce India, which means Know India. And every Friday we put a post out on all the social media platforms talking about one particular movie. And in the last couple of weeks, we have done regional films: Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Kannada, Malayalam. And we have such a vast reservoir of movies in the regional cinema besides Bollywood. I think everything needs to be pushed, and they are fabulous films. I have personally seen some of those during the quarantine period, and I'm a great fan of all the regional movies. So we are trying to project that India is not only Bollywood but also much more, and then of course the diversity of India with so many languages. The respect for India automatically goes up when we talk about diversity of India and the unity of India. Before I leave the show, I want to give a message to all the viewers that stay safe, wear mask, maintain social distancing, follow all the protocol, all the norms that have been imposed by the government. They are for your own good, and they'll be helpful in control of the pandemic.
Excellency, I think you very well articulated India's relations with Argentina. You spoke about people-to-people contact, and it's really your efforts that are bringing changes in other spheres also, like tourism, energy cooperation. So that brings me to the end of the program. Thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador Dinesh Bhatia ji, who is our Indian ambassador to Argentina, for joining us on this very special program. Uh, Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ameya. Thank you. Namaskar.